today's presentation is Ransomware is Dead, Proven Strategies for Security and Business Continuity. And the focus of the presentation today is how do you make ransomware a very manageable event to recover from, largely because nobody can 100% prevent ransomware from happening. Okay? So again, the topics, a little bit about Evolve IP, a little bit about Nimble, an update on the epidemic. We're going to discuss the security challenges. We're going to talk about cloud solutions and best practices. And then we have some use cases at the very end to show how real-life scenarios play out. Troy, do you want to go through Nimble?
Yeah, so as many of you know, HPE, which is Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, closed on their acquisition of Nimble Storage last Monday, April 17th. It's a very exciting time as it expands both HPE and Nimble into more markets and provides many benefits to both Nimble and HPE customers. Nimble has a Net Promoter Score of 85, which is the highest in the storage industry. What this means is our customers love being our customers and the partnerships that we've developed with them. The combined HPE and Nimble portfolio is a leader in Gartner's Magic Quadrant and ranked in the top 3 for servers, storage, and all-flash. This acquisition further strengthens Nimble's ability to innovate even faster while extending industry-leading solutions like InfoSight across.
Great, thanks, Troy. A little bit about Evolve IP. So we are a national organization with a global footprint. You can see we have data centers in the UK, in Sydney, Australia, and in Tel Aviv, Israel. And we have 4 domestic locations where we have our data centers today. A little bit about the product set and what we have to offer. I'm not going to focus on the right-hand side of this slide, as that's largely not what today's topic of discussion is, but we do have a full hosted PBX and contact center offering. The contact center is largely our own intellectual property, and we do have some security services and an SD-WAN or an MPLS replacement product. On the left side, the cloud compute is really where this is focused because we have servers and desktops for both production or DR infrastructure, and it's management around that, but it's largely the way you put those pieces together in order to come up with the DR solution and strategies for our customers. What we do is we take top-tier technology partners that you see on the left-hand side there of the slide, and we put them together in an award-winning cloud platform, and we provide them to our customers in an operational expense or an as-a-service model, very predictable monthly spend, and we build this so they don't have to build it themselves. Where we have all the compliance, that's required, SOC 2 and SOC 3, HIPAA compliant, high trust audited, PCI, FFIEC, and ITAR, as you see there. The third-party applications is largely based on the PBX services that we offer. Okay, so a little bit about ransomware. Right, for the bad guys, ransomware is easy to get into, it's quick cash, and offers an ongoing revenue stream, which is why it's so popular, unfortunately. All right, some facts. Gartner, right, estimates there are between 2 and 3 million successful attacks in 2016. They anticipate it doubling over the next few years. Trend Micro, 53% of all companies have been a victim, but in the healthcare arena, it's 67%. And in the respondents, 60% believe that their employees are the #1 risk. We all remember the Austin Powers movie, right, by Dr. Evil. It's been $1 billion of payments in 2016. ID Agent is an organization that we work with to do a comprehensive study on email vulnerabilities, specifically in healthcare. And what we found was 76% of the compromised credentials had passwords associated with them. And that's very scary. So what ID Agent does is they monitor the deep dark web for these vulnerabilities, and they find that 76% of them in healthcare have passwords associated with them. This goes to the overarching theme, rather, of the best prevention is recovery, and we'll talk about that in a few slides. But when organizations have real live credentials that are compromised and bad guys come in looking like a legitimate user, that's very difficult to protect against, which is why we believe you have to be able to recover. Digital Citizens Alliance is someone we work with as well, where, a study was done in highereducation.edu, and what they found was 14 million total credentials were available for sale on the dark web. So again, this is increasing. The volume of compromised credentials is real. And if you go back to that prior slide, most organizations feel that their employees or their users are the #1 vulnerability that they have. This information comes from our friends at Veeam. Veeam is someone that both Evolve IP and Nimble is very closely aligned with. But even as far back as 2013, the number of discovered ransomware incidents was much lower than what it is today. So you can see over the last couple of years, it has exponentially increased. And those zero-day attacks are always there, which again is why we believe you have to recover from the ransomware attacks, because there's always a new one being discovered, and there's always a new vulnerability, and those zero-day attacks are really the most difficult to protect against. So there are only two types of organizations, those that have been compromised and those that will be compromised. Again, also in line with the FBI, their best practices are their keys for protection. You must back up your data regularly, have the integrity of it verified, make sure they're secure, and make sure they're isolated from the systems that they protect. This all goes into that overarching theme that you have to be able to recover to truly be protected. So our approach is that there really should be a three-pronged best practice here, right? You have to have the proactive threat intelligence, right? You have to have vulnerability monitoring. You have to have employee education, right? So be proactive to prevent the bad guys from coming in. Make sure you have an active security management policy so you're continually monitoring and managing what you're doing to make sure it's as secure as it possibly can be. And then you need to have a recovery posture, a strong reactive posture, because incidents will still happen. And it may not just be ransomware. We saw a couple, maybe 2 months ago now with, public cloud where user error took down a significant portion of the infrastructure for, 6-7 hours. Applications fail, hardware fails, physical infrastructure, buildings, premises are compromised, in addition to the ransomware. So to truly have the best preventative measure, we believe you have to be in a position to recover. So Troy is going to go through a few things here related to Nimble.
Thank you, Bob. And as we've been talking about, ransomware is a very serious threat. And as we see here, information, data, and access is coming from everywhere. As information and access to that information can live in many places, it requires a foundational approach to ensure that data is protected, regardless of where it lives, what tier of data it is, or how it's accessed. And to do this, it really demands a technology strategy that is fast, flexible, scalable, and composable. And delivered in today's reality, it's a hybrid IT environment. Whether your apps and data are in your data center, a private and or public cloud, or multi-cloud. And you need the flexibility to operate seamlessly across these environments and to be able to do that without compromising. In addition, you must be able to capitalize on the convergence of IoT, applications, data closest to your patients and customers, employees, users, and transactions. And this is what's called the intelligent edge, where your organization touches the patients, customers, and employees in the entire outside world, and where data, new value, and experiences are actually being created. So often data and applications are tiered within an organization, and we're going to talk about the life cycle of this information and how that really relates to threats and protecting this information. So usually when the data is tiered, it's done by the value of the application or the data of that application to the organization, or maybe by the performance requirements or the capacity required. And often cost is a big factor of this as well. So what's the cost for the infrastructure to really support the application? In addition, the way the data is protected is often tiered, usually by the value of the information or application to the organization. And data protection can be very expensive, and if it's very rigorous, and really comes down to how often is the data protected and how long is it retained. And this plays a large factor into deciding how to protect the data. So we represent how we protect the data with the different sides of the shields, with the larger shields representing more expensive but also better levels of protection. In cloud providers, we can be highly variable based on which cloud you're using, how you're using it. So for now, we've represented that with a shield with a question mark on it. And as data is created and consumed across many different tiers and by many different sources and users. And so we see this represented by the various lines sending data between not only the data sources and users, but also between the different tiers of storage as well. And then we add on wearables and IoT, which is really big in healthcare when you look at all the different devices that are out there sending information back, people with Fitbits and smartwatches and smartphones that are also interacting. So we really said this is expanded even further. And we also see data being copied, used, repurposed, imported, backed up, archived between the different tiers, and often for different reasons. Some of the reasons we do see this, though, is maybe populating a population health database for analytics or various portals like a patient portal. And often secondary systems are fed from the information in primary production systems. So the secondary and tertiary systems often don't have the same levels of data protection, which can make them more ripe for attack, and they still provide really great gains for an attacker. And it can be much easier for these attackers to focus on these other systems as it requires less effort, but they still get a reward. And the reason for this is often as the data moves between these different systems, there's still critical, highly valuable information just stored in a less important system. And so we see this, the attackers getting through the smaller protection shields and having greater success with the less protected tiers, and we represent that with the size of the lines and arrows kind of going through. So again, as these attackers look to target a particular organization or company, it's going to be much easier for them to go after one that's going to be less secure, but either give them some kind of information or potentially give them a backdoor into the real targets of the Tier 1 systems. So Nimble provides a simple, secure, and consistent platform, and we do this across all tiers of data using our multi-cloud flash fabric. This allows you to have a foundation that is inherently secure and easily recoverable. This also allows you to provide a consistent and cost-effective means of data protection with near immediate recoverability for all of your information, regardless of where it's stored, which tier of data or application it is, whether that's on-premise or in a Nimble-based cloud like Evolve IPs. And Nimble provides a robust and feature-rich architecture. This is our multi-cloud flash fabric. It's extending the same features, data protection, and capabilities across all tiers of data, whether it's stored on-premise or in a Nimble-based cloud like Evolve IPs. It is able to do this in a cost-effective and automated way, reducing risk as it reduces costs. And Nimble's multi-cloud flash fabric is a common architecture that spans flash arrays, converged, and multi-cloud storage, giving the same services across on-premise and the cloud, even allowing you to move data between these different platforms and to be able to do that in a secure and encrypted manner. So the attributes of these common architectures are flash-optimized, high-performance, and high-capacity systems that are able to use a scale to fit, which is a highly scalable and non-disruptive scale-up and scale-out architecture. All of these use a unified data services across all the arrays, converged, and cloud, combined with simple administration and management. And then we also have the multi-cloud mobility. This is the ability to easily move data between arrays, both on-premise and in private and public clouds, and to do it in a highly secure and encrypted manner, and also to make it very easy to do as well. So in addition, Nimble provides InfoSight, which is the leading predictive analytics solution using advanced machine learning to monitor your systems. Not only does it monitor, but it's also able to identify and resolve 86% of issues, and able to do this beyond just storage to include networks, virtualization, and applications. It's like having someone on your team who never sleeps, knows of every issue that has ever happened across tens of thousands of systems, and also why. Why was there ever an issue? And it has the ability to immediately correlate disparate events to know if you're trending towards a non-optimal situation and what to do about it in order to prevent it. And when deciding on infrastructure, there are many things to consider. An ideal solution, for an ideal solution, there's a lot of different requirements, and you've got to try to balance these different requirements and do that along with how can you do it for the most cost-effective, meet all the different requirements, but also do it without creating compromise or restrictions. And with that understanding is why Nimble created our multi-cloud flash fabric, giving our customers the greatest choice and flexibility. Bob?
Yep, great. Thanks, Troy. And what this talks about here is in conjunction with what Troy was just describing about how, whether it's on-premises or in the cloud, their InfoSight will allow you to have insight and knowledge into your storage and the performance. To complement that, what we have at Evolve IP is something called Prem Extend, or extend your premises to the cloud. And as you move from the left to the right on the screen here, you get an increase in the survivability and an increase in the recoverability of your data and a shorter time frame for it to be recoverable, right? So that RTO, shrinks. And the far right is, again, this is a kind of a continuum, and we have to figure out where on this continuum do potential customers fit and then apply our services, accordingly. So the far right is a scenario where, we would provide comprehensive IT support in addition to all the managed infrastructure. One to the left is managed infrastructure, but we allow our customers to push the button, so to speak, for disaster recovery and also for any kind of testing they may want to do. So our goal here, in conjunction with Nimble, is to extend your premises to the cloud, where we can provide an extension of your data center in our environment. This is the same information in a quadrant, right? We're all used to the magic quadrant, so to speak, and in all the quadrants, you always want to be in the upper right-hand quadrant. So this just shows the level of effort for the customer related to the level of protection that you get from us. So again, not everyone needs to be in that upper right-hand quadrant because they may have more resources or more of a desire to do some of this work themselves. But this, again, we view this as a continuum, and our job is to figure out where on that continuum does the customer fall, and then can we help them with those services. And again, the key question or the key piece of this is recoverability. Can I recover in a HIPAA-compliant, high-trust audited cloud environment? And you can see the different types of services or technologies or processes you may go through and what that recovery typically is, right? So the bottom right there, the 4 to 24 hours and the less than 4 hours, that is typically where we find most healthcare organizations need to be. And again, we allow them to recover in a HIPAA-compliant, high-trust audited cloud environment. So again, the best practices: have in-data center backups. Have a copy of those backups in an off-site data center. Make sure you have replication of the data, because replication is different than backup. And make sure you have multiple points of recovery that you can go back to within those within that replication. And make sure the servers are recoverable in an off-site data center. One of the more publicly known outages recently, some customers there had in data center backup, but they didn't have recoverability outside of that data center. And that's what we want to present to customers. And then the user access, right? IP addressing, domain controllers, VPN, all the firewall, all those items are important, and have them pre-configured and pre-built prior to any incident you may need to recover from. Okay? So just pictorially, how this will look, and that far right could be an on-premises data center. It could be your primary data center in a colo. It could be a hosted data center, right? So offices and remote users would access, the servers that, has obviously, storage associated with it in that data center, and do in-data center backup. And then what you would do is take, a copy of the backups to another data center, but also replicate that data, whether you're doing what we would do is if Nimble is deployed on a customer's premises, we would do a Nimble-to-Nimble volume replication to our SAN, which is Nimble-based, and then the servers on the left-hand side are what you would recover to, right? So you have your production data on the right, you have volume-based replication to a SAN in the left-hand side there, and then recoverable servers that, again, a customer can do it themselves or we can help them with it depending on which level of service they agree to. And again, that access to Blue Arrow to get into that secondary data center is all, pre-built prior to any incident someone may need to recover from. Okay, so a couple use cases and everything we just spoke about, right? What does it look like in real life, or what are some real scenarios where it may apply? So the title of the presentation is Ransomware is Dead, and the first use case is Ransomware is Alive, right? But this is a real scenario where a customer had a ransomware attack, and they had a combination of low-end tape and inexpensive low-end cloud backup, but they had no servers they could recover to. It was a very slow recovery process, and it was 5 to 6 files at a time, over the wire, back down to their infrastructure, and it took them 7 days to be partially operational, but a full 2 weeks before they were fully operational, right? That obviously is not acceptable for most organizations, right? So again, the key piece here was they didn't have their data replicated, and they didn't have it in a recoverable fashion in an offsite data center. Right. Another scenario, we have the cyber attack, right, where ransomware can be dead, or any cyber attack is dead, is a customer had a corruption of their SAN volume, and they lost access to the data. They had half of their backups with us, with our DRAS services, and half on their premises, right? So we were able to immediately, some of that info site that Troy talks about, it assists us here. We're able to immediately find a point in time back over the last 72 hours to recover from, and because of the volume replications, within 2 hours we were able to have that data accessible to them. And then their internal recovery efforts, was only 75% available after 2 weeks. So again, the data that was in our cloud, accessible within hours, the data that was not in our cloud was not even fully accessible within 2 weeks. So again, the key here is having that data recoverable for you in a very short time frame. The piece of it that becomes a challenge is you have to balance cost with functionality, and that's where we, sometimes have to prioritize, as Troy was talking about earlier, priority 1, 2, and 3 data, and make sure you have priority 1 data with the longest RPO and the shortest RTO, and then obviously work from there. All right, and another example would be, a Cryptolocker, where their production was compromised through an email account, right? Email being one of the largest areas of vulnerability, right? And they had backup and replication in our cloud, along with servers that were recoverable in our cloud. It was a little bit of a manual analysis, but we were able to find the best recovery point because of the volume replications. Within 60 minutes, we had everything pinpointed, and within an hour and a half, they were recoverable. And this was a scenario where this happened in the overnight hours, and by the time everyone got to work in the morning, there was no disruption to their, for the user base, there was no disruption to their day. Okay, so again, summarizing what we had spoke about, right? The proactive threat intelligence and active security management are critical to, we all know that, right? In IT, that's critical. But that only does so much, and zero-day attacks are always there, and there are always issues that you cannot 100% prevent, which is why we believe that recovery is the best prevention, and if you have a strong reactive posture and can recover quickly in a compliant cloud, you truly do make ransomware or other incidents very manageable, and they are truly dead. So that is that's the end of the presentation. I'll turn this back over to Val to see if there's any questions.
Great. And just as a reminder, everybody, please submit your questions through the Q&A tab, and we will go through those. There are a couple that have come through so far. Bob, there was one for you about, let's see, once you recover data in the cloud, is it permanently there or is it destroyed at some point?
Okay, that's a good question, and the answer to that, like the answer to so many questions in life, is it depends, right? So it depends on what the scenario is and where the production environment is, right? So in a let's call it a typical example, right? Production on the customer's premises, it's volume-based replication to our cloud, and servers are available in our cloud to recover. If we were to recover that data in our cloud and make that primary for a period of time, however long that is, once the customer is comfortable to fail back to their premises for production, so in essence, you're replicating from your production on your prem to our cloud. Once our cloud becomes primary or production, that replication, when ready to do so, happens in reverse. And then once we default back to what's called on-premises as the primary production environment, the servers are wiped clean, but we still have the replication being done back and forth.
Okay, Troy, I think this one was for you. Somebody's asking if you can explain the mobility part a little bit more. How exactly does Nimble support that?
Yes, so there's a couple different ways of doing mobility. Part of it is integrated directly into Nimble, if you're going from Nimble to Nimble, whether that's on-premise or cloud. And within Nimble, it's really easy in our graphical user interface to select a volume and tell it to move to another Nimble system, and it will go through and do a background copy operation to bring it over. You also can, if you're going, say, between an on-premise to a cloud, you can leverage our replication to do that, and then be able to bring it up into the cloud and have all your data intact. It's fully encrypted throughout this entire process as well. So another question that a number of people ask is, well, if you don't currently have Nimble, do you have any options? And does Nimble do that natively? And that currently is not something that Nimble does natively, but both Nimble and Evolve IP, we are partnered with ZeroDay, who will enable you to do heterogeneous replication as well. So if you need to move from another cloud provider into Evolve IP or into an on-prem solution based on Nimble, you can use something like ZeroDay in order to do that, or have various different storage arrays within your own data center or multiple data centers. There are tools that you can do that as well.
Great, okay. Bob, I think this one is for you. What is the cost associated with recovering in your cloud?
Yep, another legitimate question, and the start of the answer is the same, which is it depends. What I can give you is what are the kind of the levers that determine the variables of where cost may be. So it's really dependent upon the number of servers, dependent upon the compute units, right? How much RAM is required, how many terabytes of storage are required, and then is it 4 hours or 24 hours? So it all depends, right? But there are really the variables there. And when we go through a proposal process, if in doing the financial piece of it, if it seems like it's too expensive or more than where a customer has budget for, how we're able to reduce that is maybe we reduce the number of servers that are available in less than 4 hours. You can't really reduce the storage, and we don't like to reduce how far back you can go. So really, it's how much of the production environment do you need to have within 4 hours. That really becomes the variable that allows us to lower cost if full recovery is not within budget.
Okay, we do have a couple other questions coming in. Troy, I don't know if you want to address any of these first.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a question about what keeps the replicated data from being encrypted by ransomware, and that's a great question. Something that's native to Nimble Storage's platform is the ability to do highly efficient snapshots, and to do this at a very frequent basis without any performance overhead to the system, and have multiple data protection points and store these with for various timelines as well. So, like any kind of replication or mirroring, any data that's created is going to be replicated. One of the things that Nimble is able to offer is if the data is encrypted via ransomware and is sent over, you've got multiple recover points now that you can do on either the primary or the target's Nimble system using our snapshots. And what you can do is you can find that exact point of time of when the system was compromised or when the data was compromised and revert back to your previous snapshot and get all your data back and be up and running. And that can actually just take a matter of minutes to do. So again, your impact can be very, very minimal to kind of non-existent. And tools like InfoSight can really help identify when that time period might have been by seeing different patterns within the data access. So say it's 7 o'clock at night and suddenly your volumes have a surge in I/O activity. Most likely that's going to be from a ransomware attack going through and encrypting all the data, creating all this additional workload. So you know the point in time to go back to, and you can revert to a snapshot prior to that. And again, this is done very efficiently. It can be fully automated as well to have these different protection schedules to really reduce any burden and do it very cost effectively.
Yeah, Troy, it's Bob. The last piece of what you had just said there, that third use case that I showed, that is exactly what happened and how we were able to make that recovery so efficient for that one customer I'm referencing.
Excellent. Yeah, that's perfect. There's another question here too. Are you offering encryption in flight and encryption at rest? So the Nimble storage array itself does at-rest encryption. When we talk about moving the information or replicating data between Nimble arrays, whether it's on-premise, private cloud, or into Evolve IP's cloud, data that's encrypted remains encrypted in flight between the Nimble arrays. So if it's just from the Nimble array to a host, once it leaves the Nimble array, it's no longer encrypted unless the target is another Nimble array. A lot of other systems out there, as soon as the data either leaves the disks, the backend SAS path, or the controllers themselves, even if they are communicating amongst other storage arrays by the same manufacturer, a lot of times that data is decrypted and now it's exposed in flight. So anytime there's nimble-to-nimble replication or movement of data between Nimble arrays and the original volumes are encrypted, all that data stays encrypted. All right, so I'm going to read another question here. There's one, I think, for Bob here. It says, how are you backing up your environment? What are your cloud RTO and RPO delivery capabilities, and how are you connecting your customers into both the primary and backup sites?
Yep, that's a good question. Let me start with the last piece of the question and kind of work backwards to the front piece of the question. So the connectivity on the diagram that I had shown, there's obviously multiple firewall instances when we provide the service, and there's multiple instances. So there's a test environment along with ultimately a production environment. For our DR as a service offering, we are truly building production environment for customers, but it's used for DR, right? So that infrastructure is built and ready to be used, which is why we allow customers to literally press the button themselves and perform testing without our involvement. I'm not going to be able to speak very eloquently about, the nuances to domain controllers and all the VPN. All of that is stuff that's important, and we work out in the implementation process if there's any questions that came out of the, the pre-sale process there. As far as the backup within the data centers, in each data center, there is high availability, and every aspect of the platform is fully redundant. And when I went on one of the slides, we talked about the best practices. That's regardless of whether you're in a cloud or on your premises. What as an example, if a customer has production with us, right, we provide, and we utilize Veeam to provide in data center backups. We then will take a copy of those backups to an alternate data center, geographically diverse, and then we would do a combination of maybe nimble-to-nimble, volume-based, maybe it's Zerto, to do replication from one data center to the geographically diverse data center where we have recoverable servers. So we try and separate the geography and separate the services so customers can survive not only an application issue or human error, but also if there is an infrastructural issue within the data center. And that's a best practice whether you're in a cloud or you're in your own colo or on your own premises. So I hope that answered the question.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining our event today, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.